The Abolitionists. The abolition movement was an anti slavery movement that happened in the 18th and 19th centuries in the United States. It started when religious groups, such as the Quaker and Evangelists, started to oppose slavery. They opposed slavery because their religion strictly opposed the treatment of people in such a negative way. Fairly soon, all forms of media such as newspapers, pamphlets, articles, and propaganda were written to persuade the rest of the country toward abolitionism. Many societies were founded as safe harbors for rogue slaves. Some freed slaves were transported back to Africa, while others actually traveled across the United States preaching anti slavery. All of these factors tore apart the North and South, which eventually led to the American Civil War as we know it. Tactics and strategies. During the 1830s, the abolition movement took on a new form of energy and momentum. By the 1830s, the movement mounts to the proportions of a near crusade, and by 1833, overseas British counterparts to American abolitionists helped to unchain the slaves in the West Indies. The religious spirit and the Second Great Awakening helped build confidence in African Americans to turn against slavery itself. For those that are unaware, the Second Great Awakening was a Protestant religious revival movement during the early 19th century in the United States. The movement began around 1790, gained momentum by 1800, and after 1820, membership rose rapidly among Baptist and Methodist congregations whose preachers led the movement. So, once this movement is in full form, Christians eventually start to believe that it's sinful and morally wrong to enslave other citizens. The propaganda pamphlet, American Slavery, was created by Theodore Dwight Weld, and it helped abolitionists see the wrongs of slavery. So those that were sort of on the fence after reading this were swayed toward Weld's opinion. And here we have a recap for your notes. Please pause now. Uncle Tom's Cabin, created by Harriet Beecher Stowe, was influenced by the American Slavery Institution. Now, Stowe had great influence, but you wouldn't believe it based off of her size. She was little, under 5 feet tall, but what she lacked in height she made up for influence and success. Uncle Tom's Cabin became one of the most widely read and deeply penetrating books of its time. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies and was translated into numerous languages. Now, many historians have credited the novel with contributing to the outbreak of the Civil War. By 1833, the American Anti-Slavery Society is formed, and Wendell Phillips, their leader, is considered abolition's golden trumpet. For those of you that don't know what a golden trumpet is, that is your poster child for the movement, someone who can do no wrong. And he was their poster boy until Frederick Douglass, a former slave, writes the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass and ends up going pretty much on a tour across the states preaching against slavery. Abolitionists looked at politics to try to end the blight of slavery at this point. Slaves eventually used religion as a getaway from slavery life. This also influenced songs as well. And here we have a quick recap for your notes. Please pause the clip now. Success and failures, and now we're going to look at successes within the movement. Now, the movement started with only a few hundred abolitionists, and by 1840 ended up with thousands organized into local anti-slavery societies across the North. During the 1840s, the Liberty Party formed due to the strong desire of getting slavery out of the picture. Now, slavery may have ended, but war resulted not through repentance and love, but through military battle. The anti-slavery eventually granted African Americans more rights and freedom, such as the 13th Amendment. And here we have a quick recap for your notes. Please pause the clip now. So now let's look at the failures within the movement. By 1840, the movement had pretty much died out, splitting into two different groups. One, which you'll notice to the left, one group was led by Theodore Dwight Weld, but he dropped out of abolition entirely in the early 1840s due to his loss in faith and hope of reformation because it was taking far too long. Now, the other group, which you'll notice to the right, had promise in creating an anti-slavery society, but their entire movement was crippled due to the economic collapse of 1837, in which their group was bankrupted. So, what does this kind of boil down to? Well, you have Northern abolitionists that want to change, and Southern slave owners that don't because they like the way that life is. And so, because they couldn't agree on any terms regarding slavery agreement, this now results in war. And here we have a quick recap for your notes. Please pause the clip now. So, summary. The movement is considered a success due to the fact that in the beginning, the movement started with only a few hundred followers and ended up with thousands. A new political party, the Liberty Party, is formed, with abolishing slavery being the basis for its formation. Not too shabby. Now, abolitionists are able to create new towns across the North where they have this communal goal, and the communal goal is to aid their cause. That this is a free town for blacks, and that on top of that, they want to try to spread the message. So, the people that are living there, if they don't share that message, boom, they're out. Now, with these efforts in hand, African Americans are now gaining more rights and freedoms than previously possessed. So, what does this boil down to? Well, a project. So, what are we going to do? We're going to be looking at pioneers of freedom. These are abolitionists that had more sway, more influence, and a heavier impact than the average Joe. You will be researching one of these following abolitionists. So, at your table, you all need to decide who is researching which abolitionist, so there are no repeats. I shouldn't be walking over to a table and we have 4 people covering Theodore Weld, because that's just going to be boring. The research that you do will have a due date. That will be this Friday at 11:59 p.m. And what you need to remember is that this research is about their contributions and how you synthesize information about their lives. Think. This is less of regurgitating information and more about how you can explain why they are still revered today. Your writing requirement is a 1-page requirement for a minimum, and you may not double space this. Good luck.